My name is Elena Carter. I'm 38 years old, and this is the day they decided I didn't belong. Not just in their family, but not even at their table. Not even close. They seated me in the kitchen. Not near the back. Not at the kids' table. Not even at the forgotten corner next to the speakers. No, the actual kitchen. That was where they decided I would fit. Me, the sister of the groom, the guest who RSVP'd months ago, who helped fund part of this very wedding through a contract none of them knew I controlled. When the catering manager led Marcus and me through a side hallway, I thought maybe we were heading to a private family table, or some kind of surprise. But then she opened a heavy staff door. The sounds of clinking glasses, jazz, and polite laughter faded as the loud clatter of dishes and sharp commands echoed from inside. A table for two sat in the corner, shoved between crates of bottled water and a stack of floral centerpieces yet to be placed. It was draped in a white cloth that couldn't quite hide the folding metal legs underneath. Two mismatched chairs. No name cards. No view, no acknowledgement. I froze. The catering manager gave a tight smile, professional but strained. There was a last-minute change to the seating chart. This is temporary, of course. Temporary? I asked quietly. This is a wedding reception, not a layover. She didn't respond. Just nodded and backed away like she'd been burned. Because she probably had. Because this wasn't her decision. It was Tiffany's, the bride. And my brother, Scott, had obviously agreed. Marcus looked at me, jaw tight. Are you serious right now? I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because I already knew the truth. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a mix-up or an oversight. It was intentional. And what hurt most wasn't even the location, it was that no one seemed to think it mattered. Not my parents, not my brother. Not a single soul in that reception tent even noticed I wasn't among them. They all saw me. But they didn't see me. I was standing there in a navy blue dress I'd had custom tailored, heels pinching my feet, makeup flawless, posture poised, and yet they saw nothing more than an inconvenient detail. An extra plate. A background character. They didn't know what I was worth. They didn't know that I had signed the biggest contract of my career with Bradford Enterprises, Tiffany's family company, just 3 months earlier. They didn't know that the software system that was going to streamline and save millions for Richard Bradford's empire was mine. I was the CEO, the architect, the woman behind the numbers they toasted. And still, they sat me in the kitchen. My God, Marcus said softly, placing a hand on the small of my back. Do you want to leave? Because we can walk out right now. I shook my head slowly. Not yet. Not until I made it crystal clear what they'd just done, not just to me, but to their legacy. Because this wasn't just petty, it was professional suicide. And they had no idea what was coming. I'm okay, I lied again. But this time, there was a razor edge in my voice. I took one last look at the table, the sad little table, then turned away. Something in me snapped. Not in rage. Not in humiliation. In resolve. This wasn't about being angry anymore. It wasn't even about being hurt. It was about drawing the line. Because for decades, I'd been silent. I'd swallowed every backhanded compliment, every, she's just different, every time they forgot to show up. I thought maybe, just maybe, success would change how they saw me. It didn't. But I had changed. I stepped into the nearest bathroom, locked the stall, and finally let the tears fall fast, hot, silent. My fists clenched against my thighs, trembling from the weight of everything I'd buried. I didn't cry because I was weak. I cried because I was done. I cried because tomorrow, they'd wake up to a world without that $30 million contract they so carelessly disrespected. I cried because for once in my life, I wasn't going to chase their approval anymore. When I emerged from the stall, I caught my own reflection. Mascara slightly smudged. Shoulders slumped. Then slowly, I straightened. Fixed my eyeliner. Smoothed my hair. Lifted my chin. It was time they learned the truth. And I wasn't going to shout it. I was going to sign it into a cancellation notice with their company's name on top. The same company they'd spent months negotiating with. The same contract my brother didn't even realize was tied directly to me. Funny, isn't it? How they built a wedding around power and prestige, and the most powerful person in the room was sitting outside their tent in the damn kitchen. Well, not for long. Because I was about to walk back in. And I wasn't bringing a smile. I was bringing a reckoning. I wasn't always invisible. There was a time when Scott and I were just kids running barefoot through our backyard in Charleston, catching fireflies in mason jars and pretending the world was fair. Back then, it wasn't about who was more successful. It was just Elena and Scott. We were a team, we built blanket forts, we whispered secrets under covers. We shared peanut butter sandwiches and swore we'd never let anything come between us. But childhood is a promise the world forgets to keep. It started in high school. Scott joined the football team, tall, strong, golden boy smile that made parents and coaches beam. My father, especially, clung to that like a lifeline. "That's my boy," he'd say every Friday night, clapping Scott on the back after each game, even if his team lost by 40. Me? I was the girl in the corner with a laptop and a robotics club badge. I built apps, won science fairs, got published in a statewide coding journal by 16. They never came. Not to my award ceremonies, not to the tech expos, not to my district debate final, where I stood alone on a stage in front of 300 people and looked out at an empty seat where my parents should have been. "It's not personal," my mom would say. "It's just that football builds character. What you're doing, that's nice, honey. But it's more of a hobby, right?" A hobby. I got into MIT on a full ride. Scott barely scraped into Dad's alma mater with a sports scholarship and a C average transcript. Still, he was the one they celebrated. At holidays, the entire dinner table buzzed about Scott's games, Scott's frat stories, Scott's internships, even the one where he spent a whole summer fetching coffee for a construction firm's junior VP. Meanwhile, when I mentioned my summer AI research at Stanford, they nodded politely, then changed the subject to the new granite countertops in the kitchen. I learned to shrink myself into the quiet. They made it look so natural, I almost believed I wasn't worth hearing. After college, Scott walked straight into Carter Construction, the company my grandfather started, and my father expanded. He got a manager title within 3 weeks. No prior experience, no real credentials. No problem. Me? I started from scratch. I took freelance gigs writing code for small businesses and startups. Slept on a futon in a shared apartment above a pizza shop. Ate discount ramen and burned through 3 laptops because I couldn't afford decent ones. There were nights I only had $11 in my account and had to decide between groceries or internet. But I never gave up. I worked nights at a call center, days at a co-working space. I pitched investors with no connections. I wrote proposals at 2 a.m. and drank gas station coffee until I couldn't feel my hands. No one in my family asked how I was doing. Not really. I'd call home sometimes, hoping for a scrap of support. "Still doing that tech thing?" my dad would ask. Still. As if it were a phase. As if one day I'd grow up and join the family business pour concrete and sit in meetings talking about zoning permits and pipelines. I didn't want pipelines. I wanted to build something real. And I did. At 28, I registered Carter Logic Systems with the state of South Carolina. Just me, a laptop, and $4,000 I'd saved over 2 years. 2 years later, I landed a pilot contract with a mid-size logistics firm. 4 years after that, we were signing enterprise-level deals with national developers. And then, this past year, we caught the attention of Bradford Enterprises. They reached out through their operations director, not realizing I was the same Elena Carter tied to the Bradford wedding through Scott. All they saw was excellence, results, innovation. I signed the contract that would change my company forever. $30 million, multi-phase integration, exclusive support. It would fund my expansion, double my team, elevate our reach internationally. Still, I thought foolishly that maybe now, they'd finally see me. That maybe if I came to Scott's wedding not just as the sister but as a strategic partner in the bride's family empire, things would be different. I bought the perfect dress, I brought Marcus, my partner and a respected venture capitalist. I RSVP'd on time. Smiled through the engagement party. Saturday through passive-aggressive remarks like, "Still doing tech?" with a practiced grace. But I should have known. The past doesn't forget. Because no matter how high I climbed, to them I was still the girl who should have been a secretary, not a CEO. And that's why they put me in the kitchen. Not because there wasn't space, but because in their world, there was never going to be a seat for me. No one saw the nights I slept under my desk. No one saw the spreadsheets with red numbers, the declined loan applications, or the way I sometimes cried into a microwaved burrito at 1 a.m., wondering if I was delusional for trying to build something that no one in my family believed in. But I saw it. I lived it. After launching Carter Logic Systems, I knew I had maybe 12 months to make it work before the bills caught up. I gave up my apartment lease and turned a tiny warehouse sublet into a hybrid office sleeping quarters. My bed? A beanbag chair with a blanket. My wardrobe? 3 blazers, 2 pairs of heels, and whatever didn't wrinkle when folded into a backpack. There were weeks I didn't see the sun except through the parking lot window. I took every project I could get, automating inventory for mom-and-pop shops, designing CRM systems for local nonprofits, even fixing broken code for other developers who had bigger clients and better reputations. I didn't care, I just needed to learn, build, survive. Most nights, I'd be up until 3 or 4 a.m., staring at lines of code so long I couldn't tell where the bugs were hiding anymore. I'd drink instant coffee mixed with protein powder because I didn't have time to stop for meals. Some weeks I only ate what was left in the office snack drawer: crackers, peanut butter, trail mix. People think success looks like a breakthrough moment. Mine came in dozens of silent, lonely hours. And still, I kept going. I pitched to over 40 investors before one finally said yes. His name was Mr. Alton Reyes, a Cuban-American entrepreneur who had built a logistics firm from scratch in the 90s and was now quietly funding women-led startups in tech. He met me in a cramped conference room on the 4th floor of a co-working building with peeling paint and flickering lights. "You work alone?" he asked. "Not forever," I replied. "But right now, I can't afford mistakes, and I can't afford ego, just efficiency." He nodded slowly. 2 weeks later, I got my first $100,000 investment. No strings, no control grabs, just belief. That money paid for my first employee, a developer named Jordan, who had also left a fancy tech job to pursue something with meaning. Then came Mia, my operations lead, and Zach, who turned our software into something clients could actually understand and love. With a real team behind me, things began to move faster. We refined our supply chain optimization tool. It used predictive analytics and AI to help companies prevent bottlenecks, reduce storage costs, and make faster delivery commitments. Our first big win was with a regional furniture distributor. They saved over $2 million in their first year using our system. That win led to another, and another. Soon, we were being invited to speak at tech summits. I gave a TED-style talk at the Women in Tech conference in Atlanta. Carter Logic Systems became a name people in the logistics industry whispered about with curiosity. But with growth came pressure. When we got into negotiations with Bradford Enterprises, I knew this could be our make-or-break deal. Their commercial real estate network was vast. Their inefficiencies were legendary. If we could fix their logistics pipeline, we could handle almost anyone. For 3 months, we gave everything to that deal. Customized demos, security audits, compliance walkthroughs. I memorized more policy documents in a week than I had in 2 years of school. Their operations director, Carla Wren, was tough but fair. She grilled us on every detail, and by the time we finished the final round of presentations, she said, "Your system is the most elegant solution we've seen. And you? You run your team like you've been doing this for decades." We signed the $30 million contract 2 weeks later. I cried in the parking lot after faxing it in. Not because of the money though, yes, it meant a new office, bonuses for the team, expanded benefits, and our first European market push. But because I had done it. Without my family, without their approval, without their money, their connections, or even their attention. I had built something solid, scalable, real. Still, a part of me, a foolish, soft part, believed that when I showed up to Scott's wedding, when I walked into that tent and saw the Carter and Bradford names embroidered on the napkins, someone would say, "Wow, Elena, look what you've done." That maybe they'd introduce me proudly. Or maybe, finally, they'd just see me. They didn't text. They smiled, air-kissed, asked Marcus what he did, then nodded vaguely when I explained my role. My mother said, "Your dress is so simple, dear. You always were practical." Scott barely looked me in the eye. Tiffany, the bride, didn't even pretend to remember our names from the engagement party. But I stayed. Because I thought it was still worth trying. I thought maybe I could show them how far I'd come and maybe, just maybe, close the gap between us. Until they sat me in the kitchen. That's when I realized I had never left the margins in their minds. It didn't matter what I built. It didn't matter that I was the backbone of the software holding up their future empire. To them, I was still Scott's weird little sister with the coding hobby. And that was the moment the illusion finally shattered. Not just for them, but for me, too. When I stepped out of the restroom that day, I wasn't the same woman who'd walked in. I had entered holding back tears. I exited holding back power. Marcus stood nearby, arms crossed, eyes scanning the crowd. When he saw me, he tilted his head. "What now?" "We walk in," I said quietly. "And I remind them exactly who they've tried to erase." The reception was in full swing. Waitstaff moved with ballet precision under glowing chandeliers. Guests buzzed between courses and cocktails, laughter rising like smoke from polished lips and polished shoes. And at the head table sat Scott, Tiffany, and Richard Bradford, the man whose company now ran on my software. Around him were investors and industry insiders he clearly hoped to impress. That's where the real party was. That's where the real deals were being made. And it was a party I'd been deliberately excluded from. "Ready?" Marcus asked. I nodded. "Let's ruin their perfect little seating chart." We made our way across the tent. Some guests paused, blinking, unsure of who I was, not out of ignorance, but out of selective amnesia. The kind people develop when they're trained not to see someone. They'd trained themselves not to see me. That ended today. As I approached the head table, I heard Richard's voice mid-pitch. "With the integration of our systems and Carter Construction's expansion, we're projecting a 22% increase in efficiency next quarter." My brother beamed beside him, nodding like a bobblehead, basking in the glow. "And with our new software platform, the logistics side practically runs itself," Richard added. "Oh?" I said, loud enough to turn heads. "I'd love to hear more about this software. It sounds impressive." A hush swept across the immediate area. Forks paused midair. Conversations stuttered. Richard turned. "Elena," he said, with that polite confusion people wear when they're trying to place a face they should have remembered. Scott blinked like I was a ghost. Tiffany narrowed her eyes. "I wasn't expecting you to join us," Richard said. "Did someone guide you to your table?" "They did," I replied evenly. Right past the champagne, past the white orchids, and straight into the kitchen. The air went still. I let the silence speak. Then I smiled, cold and controlled. "But it's okay. I heard the best deals are made back of house." Tiffany laughed nervously. "There was a mix-up, too many guests. Last-minute changes." "Yes," I said, stepping closer, locking eyes with her. "Funny how the CEO of the company running your father's entire logistics division didn't make the guest list." Richard blinked. "I'm sorry?" he asked. "I'm Elena Carter," I said clearly. "Founder and CEO of Carter Logic Systems. The company you signed a $30 million contract with 3 months ago. The system you were just praising? That's mine. My team, my code, my vision. My vision." The expressions shifted like dominoes. Richard went pale. Tiffany looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. Scott looked at the floor. "You never said your sister was behind Carter Logic." Richard said, turning to Scott. Who didn't come up? Scott stammered. Didn't come up? I repeated. It didn't come up that your sister designed the system your new father-in-law just built an empire expansion around? Scott's voice cracked. Look, it's a wedding. I didn't want it to get political or complicated. You mean professional, I corrected. You didn't want it to look like I had any real importance. Tiffany tried to interrupt. Elena, let's not do this here. I raised a finger, calm as stone. Number. You don't get to steer this moment, not after seating me like staff, not after years of being treated like the family inconvenience. I pulled out my phone. Gregory? It's Elena. Initiate termination protocol on the Bradford contract, effective immediately. Gasps. Actual gasps from grown adults in designer clothes. Wait, what are you doing? Richard asked, standing up, real panic in his voice. I'm canceling the contract, I replied. Because I don't work with people who treat me like I don't exist. Elena, reasonable, he said. That system is live in 40% of our active properties. You can't just... I can, I interrupted. Read section 12 of the termination clause. Breach of professional trust and personal conduct. Your daughter's decisions and your company's treatment of me as a key partner fall under both. Tiffany stood, furious. You're doing this out of spite. No, I said simply. I'm doing this out of respect. For myself. For my team. For the value we bring. And because if this is how you treat someone when you think she's just the groom's sister, then I don't want to see how you behave when real problems come up. Scott finally looked up. You're ruining everything. No, I said gently. You did that the moment you forgot I existed. Richard tried again. Miss Carter, perhaps we can revisit the terms. In a calmer setting. I looked at him. Then at Tiffany. Then at my brother. I'm not interested in salvaging a contract, I said. I'm interested in salvaging my dignity. I turned. Marcus followed. We walked away from the table, from the silence, from the wide eyes of investors now whispering among themselves. And as we neared the edge of the tent, a man stepped forward. Miss Carter? I turned. He offered a card. Thomas Harrington. Coastal Development Group. I was very impressed with how you handled that. Might I schedule a meeting next week? I smiled. Took his card. Let's talk, I said. As we stepped into the cool night air, Marcus exhaled a low, stunned breath. That, he murmured, was surgical. I finally smiled for real. And for the first time that day, I felt seen. The morning after the wedding, I expected silence. Instead, I woke up to chaos. Emails flooded my inbox, some frantic, others apologetic. 11 from Bradford Enterprises. 3 from their legal team. 2 from Richard himself, marked, urgent. Eleanor Wright, the operations director who had originally signed us, called twice before 9 a.m. I let them all go to voicemail. Because for once, I wasn't rushing to fix someone else's mess. I was protecting what I'd built. At 10 o'clock, I walked into my office not with hesitation, but with the quiet confidence of someone who had nothing to prove anymore. Big weekend? My assistant Sarah asked gently. You could say that, I replied with a knowing smile. I spent the next hour with my executive team, outlining the fallback plans we developed months ago, just in case a contract like Bradford's ever fell through. We were lean. Nimble. We'd be fine. More than fine, actually. By noon, our inbox held 3 new leads, all from investors who had attended the wedding and seen what had gone down firsthand. Turns out, integrity has a way of attracting attention. At 3 o'clock, my phone buzzed with a name I hadn't seen in years. Aunt June. Dad's sister. The one who left the family after a bitter falling out no one ever talked about. Elena. She said when I answered. I saw the video clip. The one someone posted on LinkedIn. That was impressive. Thanks, I said cautiously. I just wanted to say, I know what it's like to be the girl they never took seriously. And I'm proud of you. Her voice cracked slightly. They'll never say it out loud, she continued. But you did what most of us never had the guts to do, draw a boundary and stick to it. We talked for nearly an hour. About business. About family. About legacy. Turns out, I wasn't the only Carter woman to be cast aside when she didn't follow the approved path. But I might be the first to win because of it, not in spite of it. That night, while I was making dinner, Marcus leaned against the counter, watching me with a soft smile. You know, he said, it still amazes me how a seating chart turned into a revolution. I laughed. It wasn't the chart, it was the truth behind it. That I was never meant to be at that table, not unless I put myself there. I thought that was the end of it. But the next morning, Scott texted. Can we talk? Just us. Lunch? I stared at the screen for a long moment. Part of me wanted to delete the message. The other part wanted to hear what he had to say. So I agreed. We met at a quiet cafe downtown. Neutral territory. No tuxedos, no contracts, just coffee and the weight of decades sitting between us. He looked tired. The kind of tired that comes from things unraveling faster than you can control. I guess I deserved that, he said after our drinks arrived. You guess? I said, raising an eyebrow. He exhaled. Okay. I did deserve that. I waited. I don't even know where to start, he admitted. I think part of me always resented how focused you were. Like, you didn't need anyone's approval. And I needed it so badly from Dad, from Richard, from everyone. So you buried me? I asked quietly. Pretended I didn't exist? I didn't mean to, he said. Tiffany. She made comments. Said it was weird to invite you to the head table when she didn't really know you, and I didn't fight her. Because, deep down, I knew putting you there meant explaining what you'd become. And that meant admitting you'd outgrown us. I looked at him for a long time. He wasn't trying to manipulate me. He was just lost in his own reflection. I don't need you to apologize for being insecure, Scott, I said finally. I need you to stop building your identity on making me smaller. He nodded. I know. I'm trying. I'm not looking for validation from this family anymore, I said. But I won't pretend I don't exist to keep the peace. He looked at me, more somber than I'd ever seen him. So where does that leave us? I stirred my coffee. That depends. Are you ready to treat me as an equal or still as the girl who should have just joined Dad's construction firm? He smiled weakly. You'd have made a terrible project manager. I smirked. Exactly. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. But there was something honest between us now, a bridge built not from obligation, but from truth. A week later, Richard Bradford requested a formal meeting. He offered new contract terms. Better ones. Apologized for the treatment I'd received not through his assistant, but in writing, signed and sealed. I took the letter. Framed it. Didn't sign the contract. Because by then, we had better offers. And I didn't need validation from a man who hadn't seen me until I cost him millions. Now, I lead Carter Logic Systems with more clarity than ever. We launched a mentorship program for women in male-dominated industries. We landed 2 international partnerships. We opened a second office in Seattle. As for my family, they've changed. Slowly, unevenly. But they're trying. Mom now forwards me articles about female founders. Dad asked me last month if I'd help him digitize some of the construction firm's back-end systems. And me? I say yes on my terms. Because I've learned something vital. You don't need their table if you can build your own. And if they want to pull up a chair, they're welcome. But they don't get to decide the seating chart anymore. What about you? Have you ever been underestimated, dismissed, or told your dream was just a hobby only to rise above it? Drop your story in the comments. Because trust me, someone else out there needs to hear it.